An overnight Russian drone attack on Kyiv has killed 3 people and 27 others were left injured. The city's mayor Vitaly Klitschko confirmed the casualties, saying that 6 children were among the wounded. He reported that drone fragments struck a 9-story residential building in the Desyansky district, causing fires on several floors. He also added that another nearby apartment block was also damaged, with 5 people rescued from there. Meanwhile, in the northern Oblonsky district, debris hit a 16-story building, damaging 1 apartment. Kyiv's military administration said several Russian drones were detected over the city and urged residents to remain in shelters. On the other hand, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine had earlier said that its troops targeted 5 areas. These areas had concentrations of Russian personnel, weapons and military equipment over the previous day. Ukraine claimed it had destroyed Russian tanks, armoured vehicles and artillery systems. We're now joined by Gilbert Doctorow. He is a Russia affairs expert and he joins us live from St. Petersburg. Gilbert, of course, these aerial attacks continue. Reported civilian fatalities and injuries continue, particularly in the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. As Russia continues its narrative that it is pushing for peace, particularly while representatives are now in Moscow, how does it continue said narratives where children continue to be injured and civilians continue to be killed?
I'd like to congratulate Mayor Klitschko for his honesty. You will note from the words that you read just a few moments ago that he identified the casualties and the damage as coming from fragments of downed drones. That is to say, he is admitting or acknowledging that the Russian drones were not targeting residential buildings. They unfortunately were, for the people living in those houses, unfortunately they were shot down by Ukrainian air defense, and they landed where they did, causing the injuries. So that is an important qualification on the inhumane, shall we say, aspect of this war. No, the Russians are continuing the fight, and it is understandable because they are under enormous pressure by the United States, which wants to punish Russia for continuing the war, and so the Russians are trying to oblige by getting it over with as quickly as possible.
Yes, we have some diplomatic updates coming up next, where Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said that Russian armed forces will respond forcefully to any strikes deep inside Russia. Peskov reiterated Russian President Vladimir Putin's statements and added that the response will be overwhelming. Earlier, President Putin warned that Moscow will never bow to pressure from the United States or any foreign power. He said any military strike inside Russia would trigger a strong response. Let's in fact listen in to what the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has had to say.
Действительно, очень много пересудов сейчас идет. И сам Зеленский, кстати, заявлял на днях, что, дескать, они обладают военным потенциалом для того, чтобы наносить удары вглубь России. Разумеется, наши вооруженные силы и Россия будет реагировать жестко на это. И, вот как сказал Путин, ошеломляющие. Они могут быть британские, они могут быть германские, они могут быть итальянские, какие угодно. Но очевидно, что сама Украина вряд ли сейчас способна производить такие ракеты. И как минимум основные узлы и блоки этих ракет – это чистые.
Separately, Peskov reported that Putin has been briefed on the situation in eastern Ukraine. Up to 5,000 Ukrainian troops are surrounded in the Kupiansk area, while more than 5,500 are encircled in the Krasnoarmysk. Putin visited a Russian command post on October the 26th and met with Chief of the General Staff Valery Gerasimov and the battle group commanders involved in the operation. Gilbert, I just first want to start on this statement made by the Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov. Some quite aggressive statements made. Obviously, tomahawks, the possibility of Zelensky getting tomahawks. He came out empty-handed of that White House meeting with Donald Trump, of course. However, Russia still continues to make statements and warnings that if Vladimir Zelensky does strike into Russia's territory, that there will be dire consequences, according to the Kremlin. How serious are these statements?
Regrettably, for the deterrence factor of Russia, these statements are totally empty. He is speaking about, as you've correctly identified, the issue that Peskov is addressing and that Putin previously addressed was tomahawks being used against Russia. But that's to say that Russia will react strongly to something they know will not happen, because the United States has virtually stated that there will be no tomahawks going to Ukraine, is an empty threat. It looks like you're presenting yourself as chest beating, looking like you're strong and powerful, when you're confronting a non-existent threat. What Russia is not responding to are the real threats. And there is the problem, which makes Russia look like a paper tiger. Let's go back 1 week. In the last week, a British Storm Shadow missile was fired deep into Russia and caused some damage. I forget at what installation it was. It was some kind of production center, factory, related to the arms industry. And did we see a response to that? None. Did Russia attack the factories making Storm Shadow in Britain? No. So the threats that Mr. Putin is making are not credible. And in our day and age, when a country of the magnitude of strength of Russia makes empty threats and does not respond to real attacks, we are headed for World War III.
Gilbert, of course, we're entering into the fourth year of this war now. Just about a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump imposed those sanctions on Moscow's two largest oil companies. What is Russia's war economy like now? How is it struggling to keep going in terms of fighting? Of course, tell me a bit about how. Of course, we've seen new support come in, announcements from Europe for Ukraine. How is Russia feasing up?
Well, there are falsehoods coming from both sides, and that is not surprising in a time of war. Each country, and both those in the West and on the Russian side, are saying things which are not true. The Russian statement that the American sanctions will have no impact is nonsense. You are in India, and you know very well that I think it's Reliance, it's the biggest privately owned importer of Russian oil in India. They, 2 days ago, said they will buy no more Russian oil. No, there are people in the energy industry who say, with good reason, that the prohibition on Russian oil to India will upset the oil industry for a few months, as there's a scramble for India to get its supplies elsewhere, Saudi Arabia or other countries, and are those other countries now getting Saudi oil to probably start buying Russian. All this is true. This is not a long-term problem, but we live today. It is a short-term acute problem, and Russia for the next 3 or 4 months is going to have a big hole in its state budget, a hole which could be as much as 10% of the budget not covered because of Trump's latest sanctions, and India's necessary response, given the crushing economic impact of the secondary sanctions on India and China. So the Russians are not being forthcoming in the real damage that's being done. The travels of Mr. Dmitriev, who is the economic representative of Russia and is now in the States and is smiling and trying to meet with all kinds of business people to show how the United States and Russia will be great friends and business partners in the future. That is a very sad tap dancing exercise, which also undermines Russia's credibility as a country that defends its sovereignty. He shouldn't be there. It is absurd that that Mr. Dmitriev, on behalf of President Putin, is speaking about the brilliant future of American and Russian trade 2 days after the United States imposed crushing sanctions on Russia.
Gilbert Doctorow, thank you very much for taking the time and bringing your insight into that topic. We now move over to the West and we move over to France, and where 2 suspects have been arrested over the theft of the precious crown jewels from Paris's Louvre Museum. As per the Paris prosecutor office, one of the men arrested over the Louvre heist was about to leave the country from the Charles de Gaulle airport and was arrested while trying to flee from France. According to reports, both the men were originally from the Parisian suburb of Seine-Saint-Denis. Items worth 88 million euros were taken from the world's most visited museum last Sunday when 4 thieves wielding power tools broke into the building in broad daylight. We're now joined by Alexander Ciel. He's a French and British journalist, and he joins us live from London. Alexander, thank you very much for joining us. A huge development. Do we know anything else apart from the information that we've just said so far about these 2 men who have been arrested?
Yes, so French police arrested 2 men, as you said, on Saturday night. So a week after the robbery at the Louvre. I was on your channel last week to talk about it. According to Le Parisien newspaper, both suspects are originally from Seine-Saint-Denis, a suburb north of Paris, and are already known to police for previous burglaries. One of them, as you said, was detained at Charles de Gaulle Airport, and he was about to board a flight to Algeria. The 2 are now in police custody, where they can be questioned for up to 96 hours by a specialist unit that deals with organized crime and theft.
Yes, and of course this will be a huge relief to the French authorities. What will they be hoping to find? Do we know if these jewels have been broken down or any other evidence such as?
Well, for the moment, that's the question being asked in France. The Louvre has sophisticated security systems, but preliminary internal report suggests serious gaps. One in the 3 rooms in that part of the museum reportedly had no CCTV coverage. So right now, it's an embarrassment for France and also a sense of urgency. The government has ordered tighter security at museums, and also the Louvre itself reopened 2 days after the robbery. Internationally, this case has drawn lots of comparisons with other robberies in museums. But the 2 suspects are being interrogated, and police are now working to identify the 2 other members of the gang and trace the stolen jewels. Art theft investigations often involve tracking networks that span multiple countries. So it's really a big thing for the investigators at the moment.
Alexander Ciel, thank you very much for joining us. Pleasure to have you on the programme. We will, of course, here on NewsX World bring you all the updates in regards to all the information